Hello, denizens of the internet. Today on Art Tips I'd Wish I'd Known When I Was 13, which is a terrible title for a video series, by the way, I'd like to talk about two things which haunted me as a beginning artist: finding my style and drawing a face.
After watching the first take of this section, I can tell you that it's way too long and way too boring. I'm going to synthesize it for you right now. Basically, what I'm saying here, that when you have a mug, you should decide what the most important part of that mug is, and then you should draw that. Or you should decide what the most important part of drawing is to you, and you should draw the mug in that way. Iterate this a whole bunch of times, bringing in the things you like most from each, and you have a whole gosh dang style. All right, I think that was an acceptable amount of time to talk about mugs, so let's continue swiftly onward.
Hey, that's not fair. I wasn't finished talking about mugs.
All right, folks, buckle up for another 30 seconds of mug talk because there's no stopping this train.
Thank you. As I was saying, and that's the conceit of the first part of this video, a style is just choosing an important part of the way you observe an object, or part of the object, and exaggerating or highlighting it.
I already said that, but fair enough.
Okay, fine. We'll just skip way ahead in the video, past my monologue, and start talking about how looking at a face, choosing a technique or idea, analyzing the results, and then iterating on them can be applied to drawing a human being. Since you hate mugs, apparently.
Wow, okay, In a moment you'll see me right in the background. Realism creates realistic shapes, colors, etc. And stylization creates a shorthand, or references shorthands, for these shapes, colors, etc. And because you were being so gosh dang annoying about it, here, have a little monologue, as a treat. Now, to a certain extent, I believe that all things are sort of stylization because we're all using, in some way, shorthands, but certainly some styles are more stylized than others. Yeah, we live in a society, I get it. So now I'm listing the parts of the human face that we might think about stylizing sort of into much simpler shapes.
And now the moment you've all been waiting for. Exercise time.
Okay, because I'm actually a bit of a dummy, I didn't zoom in on these faces like I thought I did.
Explain the gosh dang exercise. Everybody, pause the video, take some time, and draw what you think shorthands for the different parts of the face could possibly be.
All right, I'm going to assume you did that. And here you can see I've just made some simple shapes and I'm sort of trying to
assume they did that? You didn't explain what a gosh dang shorthand is. Guys, a shorthand would just be a simple way of stylizing something about the face, like we were doing with the mugs. Oh, so many mugs.
Think of a shorthand as something that represents an object, even though it doesn't really look like it. Like the way we draw a heart as sort of two bumps and a pointy bit, not, like a human heart.
Though it pains me to agree with me, I will give them that. With your shorthands, you want to be taking the complex shape of the eye, the nose, the mouth, whatever, and making it into something simple and yet still recognizable as that part of the face. Ideally something that's sort of unique to your own visual language, or, to put it another way, your style.
Now, in case you don't want to just iterate shapes over and over again, sort of in a vaguely mediocre way, there's also a much easier way to figure out what sort of shorthands you could be using, and that's to study from other people. So here I've got screenshots from Fairy Tail, Breath of the Wild, One Punch Man, Over the Garden Wall, and a Spider-Man comic, and you can just see that I'm looking at them and I'm trying to break down what shapes they're using to make their eyes right now. You can see that Fairy Tail has these very square eyes sort of going on. Breath of the Wild has almost like a pentagon going on. One Punch Man really uses this circle. Spider-Man's really going for this super big realism thing with a bunch of lines just trying to sort of exaggerate the realism of the sort of eyeball behind these folded lids of skin. The key here is that these are all shorthands for the same exact object, but they're done really differently. Here I'm looking at the nose, and people mainly think noses are sort of either lines or nostrils, right? Fairy Tail thinks that it's sort of these square lines. Breath of the Wild thinks it's a triangle with nostrils. One Punch Man thinks that it's maybe a triangle but curvier, whereas Spider-Man is really thinking that it's realistic. Here, mouths, ditto, they're really just sort of a line, is sort of the consensus here. Maybe a line with teeth, and it sort of depends, I think the realism here depends on how many curves you give to your line and how closely you're trying to follow the real sort of line of the mouth. Hair really comes in sort of chunks or, I don't know, like flat or just sort of lines. There's plenty of videos detailing how to do any one of these styles. It's just sort of up to you to study them and pick and choose what you like. Also, as you study these styles more and more, you're going to start to notice patterns about what sort of looks simple or what looks realistic, or just in general, you're going to start to see how these shorthands communicate with each other, which is also a super useful skill when you have a specific project and you want it to look a specific way. Suddenly you're going to know, oh, my project needs to look really realistic, so I'm going to use a lot of lines and a lot of organic shapes. Or you're going to know, I want to really make something that looks unrealistic. So you think, okay, how can I use sort of as many simple inorganic shapes as possible? It goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyways. Obviously, what I'm saying here is not the end all be all of observations, and the whole point of developing your own style and your own artistic eye is that you're going to have opinions different from mine.
Even I have opinions different from me.
And then you're going to sort of show them through your art. And that's what's really going to give you sort of a unique, well, one of the things that's going to give you a unique voice and a unique style as well.
Well, that was boring, and it's gonna get boringer because unfortunately, I'm contractually obligated to let me continue talking until the end of this video.
The last thing I wanted to say that will hopefully be helpful to you guys is the placement of the features also affects how realistic your style looks. People tend to exaggerate the eyes and make them bigger because that's the part of the face we first look at. So smaller eyes will give you sort of a more realistic face. I would say that people tend to really shrink the nose and maybe shrink the mouth a little bit as well, because that sort of gives sort of a cuter style to things. But you can see on this last face, when I pushed the cuteness sort of all the way, and then I juxtaposed it with this very realistic body frame, actually it just gives sort of a creepy effect. And so that's something you want to sort of consider and play with as well, is that your face is also situated inside a body. So if you have a very realistic face and a very simple body, or a very simple body and a very realistic face, you're going to get this juxtaposition thing going, and it's going to be kind of creepy. I've gotten a tiny bit off track, so I'm just going to finish this up by saying, also consider the whole face as a shape that you need to stylize. You can see whether it be a circle or an oval or a pointy thing or whatever. And I'm just going to move right on to my final thoughts. All right, let's go. 1, remember the mugs. See, think, draw, analyze, repeat. It's so important, I repeated it. Always iterate your stuff. Remember, artists are narcissists. Always think about how you'd stylize the thing. And finally, studying from other people is a great way to see what they think the most important part of an object is. Oh, and I guess don't forget to like and subscribe if you see this. And that's it for me.
And also me.